have a pressure washer and air compressor running the last 2 nights. In total, we got about 26, 27 hours run time. So let's go see what the snow total is. Oh, look at there. Oh my goodness. And we've got a mountain of snow right there. I got my Ryan Hall Yallometer and it looks like we created 16 inches of snow. Well, folks, a couple years ago, I set out on a quest to make my own snow. We're down here in West Tennessee. Every year we might get 2, maybe 3 inches if we're lucky. Some years we don't get anything, and I wanted the ability to make my own snow when the conditions got right. And anyway, a couple years ago, I was on social media, maybe it's TikTok or something, and I saw a TikTok about this guy had made his own homemade Snowmaker out of some pretty cheap parts in his backyard and had a real nice base of snow. So I decided I wanted to try it myself. But anyway, details on how to design it were pretty sketchy and whatever. I did the best that I could, but pretty much all I succeeded in was making a whole bunch of ice. All right, I'm trying this Snowmaker thing one more time. It's about 15 degrees out here, so maybe it's not gonna work in this weather. It's just not gonna work at all. But anyway, I mean, it's blowing out some white stuff, so.
It just looks like slush to me.
Well, it's better than nothing,
but it's not what I would expect snow to look like.
I'm not going to say that it's a failure, but it's not a rousing success. And I don't really know exactly what I'm doing wrong. So anyway, because I didn't know the science behind it and how to properly design it, I put that project on the back burner. And anyway, a couple months ago, I came across this Facebook page called Backyard Snowmaking on Facebook, where people have been doing this for years and had a bunch of great useful information on how to properly design your snow system to actually produce snow. So after doing the research on it, I found out exactly what I did wrong. Now here's a picture of my first iteration of the Snowmaker. And actually, come to find out, my first design wasn't very far off on what I actually needed to do. So before we get to the Snowmaker part, let me show you the equipment that we're working with. To make snow, you need basically 3 things. You need the actual snowmaking mixing device with the spray tips and everything. You need a pressure washer, which this one is a 3.5 gallon per minute pressure washer. And the specs on this stuff is very important on how you design your system. And then you also need a good source of compressed air. This one right here is I believe it's a 17.5 cubic foot per minute 2-stage air compressor. Now, you don't need equipment this big. There's been a lot of people actually make snow with a lot smaller systems, but you just can't make the quantity of snow. You know, the bigger the system, the more quantity of snow you can make and the quicker you can make it at. I mean, you don't need a big pressure washer like this. You know, there's a lot smaller, a lot cheaper pressure washers, maybe in that 1.5 to 2 gallon per minute range. You don't need a big 17.5 cubic feet per minute air compressor, a lot smaller pancake pressure, maybe 5 cubic feet per minute. You can still make snow with that, but you got to size your system properly. And then on the flip side, if you have a massive air compressor, say one of those tow behind diesel models that put out like 150 cubic feet per minute, if you can get enough water flow to it, you can make massive amounts of snow. So snowmaking is possible with just about any size system, but when you actually build your Snowmaker, it's very important that you actually know the specs of your equipment so you can size everything properly. So before we get into the specs that you need on how to size this, let's talk a little bit about the science behind the snowmaking. And this is what was really not understood, and there's a good website that really explains that. I think it's www.snowstate.com. They actually explain the science behind snowmaking. But right here is my final snowmaking version. We've got a 4 nozzle setup. We've got 3 what they call bulk nozzles up here that spray the pressurized water out of. And then we've got another tip right here that they call the nucleating nozzle. It sprays mostly air with a little bit of water mixed into it, and this is the most critical part of your snowmaking device. Now, to make snow artificially, we rely a lot on the laws of thermodynamics. If you're thinking about compressed air, the reason compressed air is so important is this system is that as you compress air, it heats up. But then when you release that pressure off that air really quickly, it cools down extremely quick. So the goal of this nozzle right here, primarily air with a little bit of water mixed in, is basically when it sprays out that mixture of water and mostly air, that air expands real quick, because the air, when the temperature is right and it expands, it gets quickly below that freezing level and flash freezes these particles. So having these little ice crystals coming right here, they will then get sucked up into your main bulk nozzles right here, and as these water droplets freeze, they will attach to these ice particles to actually produce snow. And technically, if you've got your system built properly, you should be able to make snow anytime the wet bulb temperature is 28 degrees or below. The wet bulb temperature basically takes the ambient air temperature and the humidity into account. If you've got really low humidity, you can probably make snow with an ambient temperature of 30, 31, 32 degrees. Here's a chart right here with different ambient temperatures along with humidity that gives you a wet bulb temperature, and the color coding shows you when it is possible to make snow. When we're dealing with real dry air, we can make snow at warmer temperatures because as that water's being sprayed out, it's already starting to try to evaporate, which means it's cooling off. Just think about sweat cooling off your body. It provides a cooling effect. Well, when that water's being sprayed out into really low humidity environment, it's starting to evaporate, it's cooling down, which will allow it to freeze easier. But bottom line is you need at least a wet bulb temperature of 28 degrees to effectively make snow. The colder it gets, the lower that wet bulb temperature gets, the more snow you can make and the better quality snow you can make. So on to the basic design of the Snowmaker right here. We've got our water inlet here, and I've just got a valve here so I can shut it off without shutting the pressure washer off if I need to, adjust a tip or change tips out if I'm experimenting. We've got a pressure gauge right there to let me know what the pressure of water is right here, because that's very important. We've got our air inlet here with a check valve, because if something happens to our air compressor, we don't want the pressure washer to force water down through here and back towards our air compressor. So we got a one-way check valve. Then we've got our 3 bulk nozzles sized appropriately. We got our 1 nucleating nozzle sized appropriately. Then right here in the middle, this is very critical. We have a flow control valve here, which is basically a needle valve. Now on this needle valve, you can use a gate valve, you can use a ball valve, but a needle valve allows you to be very precise, allowing just the right amount of water to go to your nucleating nozzle, which is the most critical part of the process. And it's a whole lot easier to fine tune it and make good quality snow with a needle valve there than it is a gate valve or a ball valve. It is possible with a gate valve or ball valve, but it's very more difficult, and it's a lot more finicky to actually adjust the system right. Now on your bulk nozzles, how do you determine what nozzles you put on there? Well, that's where your pressure washer gallons per minute output comes into play. To make optimum snow, you want to run about 700 psi at these tips right here. Now this pressure washer over here, I think it's about a 2000 psi pressure washer, so that pressure is too high than what we really need. Now, how do you determine what size nozzle or how many nozzles that you need? Well, it all depends on the pressure you want to run and your gallons per minute of your pressure washer. And looking at this chart, and I'll provide the links in the description below, I've already said we want to run about 700 psi. So we'll look at the top of the chart, find 700 psi, and we'll go down till we find about 3.5 gallons per minute, which is what our pressure washer puts out. Then if you scroll over to the left, look at the left sidebar, that means we need a nozzle size of about 8.25. Well, they don't make 8.25 nozzles, but anyway, the nozzles that we're using, they look like this. These are just regular agricultural spray nozzles that we can buy in a lot of places in our area. You can probably buy them at Tractor Supply Company, any agricultural supply store. Potentially maybe go to your John dealer, Case IH. They might either have them or be able to get them for you, or you can order them off the internet. There's a lot of ones that don't look like this. These just attach using a cap that this fits into, but then there's also nozzles that have threads on the end that you can screw them straight into the manifold, just depending on where you buy them from. But anyway, what you want to look at on the nozzle is, I know the camera's not going to pick up, but right here on the end, there's writing right here. This nozzle right here is a 2503. Now on the nozzle, the first two numbers, the 25 part, that's going to be how wide the spray width is. This nozzle right here is going to be 25 degrees wide when it's coming out. They also make like 60 003s, which will give you a 60 degree angle of spray, which will be wider. They make 80, they make 110s, and so on. They make several different ones. So the first two numbers is the width of the spray in angles. Now the last two numbers, or the last three numbers, depending on the rate, is going to be the size of the nozzle. Now this one is a 2503, so 03 is the size of the nozzle, which means that it has an orifice diameter, if you look at the right hand side of the chart, of 0.043. So anyway, this chart was saying that we needed a nozzle size of 8.25. Well, they don't make a 8.25 nozzle. They make a size 8 nozzle, make a size 9 nozzle. They might make a size 8.5 you might be able to find, but we're running 3 nozzles, and we want this last nozzle to equal up to what the nozzle size on the left-hand side of the chart is. So we need 8.25 to 8.5 nozzles. So I'm running 2 2503s and 1 2502, which gives us nozzle size of 8. Now we've undersized those nozzles just slightly because we're also putting a little water in through our nucleating nozzle, which will take a little bit of water flow away from that. So we could get by with 2 nozzles, say 2 04 nozzles rather than 2 03s and 1 02. You want to add up the last 2 digits to equal the size nozzle you need. And anyway, that's putting us at about the 700 PSI range. Now, if you're dealing with real marginal conditions, warm temperatures, maybe higher humidity, you might want to undersize your nozzles a little bit to give you a little bit higher pressure to make that droplet size more fine, to make the droplets more smaller so they can more easily freeze, and you probably make snow a little bit easier in marginal conditions. But anytime you get to wet bulb temperature of 27, 26, keeping that 700 PSI, you can make snow effectively then. And then the colder it gets, the better it's going to get. So I've explained how to size your bulk nozzles. Now, how do you size the nucleating nozzle right here? And this is the part that gave me the most trouble and was most confusing. To determine the size of our nucleating nozzle, we're going to have to access, we're going to have to be able to access our tip chart to look on the right-hand side for the orifice diameter, and then we're also going to have to be able to access this airflow calculator. And this is where you're just going to have to do a little bit of trial and error and play around. Now, we know that my air compressor is 17.5 cubic feet per minute, so we want a nozzle that will flow 17.5 cubic feet of air. I've already done this calculation, so to make it easy, I know that we're going to need a size 15 nozzle for that. And so you look at the size 15 nozzle, go over the right-hand side, that's going to have an orifice diameter of 0.096. So we're going to plug this in. You can leave the air temperature the same. It doesn't play that big of a deal in it. Our primary pressure is going to be 150 PSI at the air compressor. Our secondary pressure is going to be 0 because we're releasing the air. And then our orifice diameter is 0.096. Hit calculate. And so that gives us an airflow rate of 18.33 cubic feet per minute. Now, my dealer didn't have in stock a size 15 tip because that's a pretty massive tip with an opening. So, but the biggest he had in stock was a 6010, which is a 60 degree spray and the size is a 10. Now that nozzle is 0.08 diameter, so we plug that in, which gives us 12.73 cubic feet per minute. So we are restricting airflow out of our compressor some, but it should still work. But anyway, that's where you need to do some playing around to figure out the, to figure out the ideal size nucleating nozzle, depending on your air compressor specs. You know, a lot of air compressors maybe be at 100 psi, which would mean that through this size nozzle, a size 10 nozzle, we could only flow 8.86 cubic feet per minute. So where a lot of people go wrong when building these things is their nucleate nozzle is not big enough. Ideally, you want to size this properly to where your air compressor runs continuously, but it maintains the pressure that you're looking for. If you size it too big, the pressure will drop down. The lower the pressure drops, the less ability that air has to cool down when it exits the tip, because it's not as high of a pressure. Conversely, if you size it too small, your air compressor will be cycling. Now, cycling is not bad as long as it's not short cycling. You know, if it's just a little bit undersized and your air compressor gets up to pressure, shuts off, and then, you know, 10, 15 seconds later, it kicks back on again, that's not going to be very good for the motor, the compressor head, or anything else. So either you want to size that nozzle to where you have a long enough break in between your compressor cycling, or your compressor runs continuously. Now, when I built this thing the first time, I'll tell you exactly what I did wrong. For one thing, I had these in between my bulk nozzles. So I had my bulk nozzle spaced a lot farther out. And then I also had my valve right here onto a T, and then I had another gate valve after that, so my nucleating nozzle was a whole lot farther down. Now, you're depending on the ice crystals coming out of this nucleating nozzle to get sucked up here into your stream, and if the space between your nucleating nozzle and your bulk nozzles is too far apart, it's not going to work very well. So you want to get your nucleating nozzle as close to your bulk nozzles as possible. So what I did is I got a 4-way cross here for my water to go in. We got a tip right here, and then I used real short bushings to join my T's together to get these three nozzles a lot closer together to where our nucleating stream could get sucked up in here real easily. Originally, I had a gate valve right here because I could not find a needle valve on short notice, so I put a gate valve in there, which did not work well at all. I could not fine-tune the flow of water enough through my nucleating nozzle. My second mistake was that my nozzles were just a hair oversized. So I reduced this one from a 3 to a 2 to be able to bring my pressure up a little bit more to get that right at 700 psi. But the biggest mistake was my nucleating nozzle. Right now I've got a size 10 on there. I started out with a size 1. So I was not getting very much airflow out of there. And then mixing that with not being able to really fine tune the water, that's the main part where I was going wrong, where this nozzle really wasn't doing anything. It was set too far away from my bulk nozzles, so nothing was really getting sucked up in there, what was coming out of there. And basically all that was happening was this was spraying out water that just pretty much formed ice. That's where my biggest mistakes came in. So with just a few little tweaks, I think we now got this system perfected. All right, just to give you a quick overview of all the parts that you'll need. Here are the mandatory parts. You're going to need a way to connect your pressure washer to all your bulk valves. So what we've got here, we've got 3 T's. 1, 2, 3 T's, and then we've got a 4-way here. Now we're running a 3 nozzle setup. Now if you only need 2 nozzles, then reduce your parts appropriately. And then in between the 4-way and the T's, we've got real short bushings to join them together. We've got 1 needle control valve. We've got 1 quick connect for our air hose, along with a check valve, and then the appropriate size bushings and everything to put up the size. We've got 1 size nucleating nozzle. Then we've got 3 bulk nozzles here. Now, whether you need the caps with your nozzles, depending on the nozzle types you buy. If you buy the threaded ones, they can just thread directly into your bushing here. And then optional is a pressure gauge. This really helps you diagnose your Snowmaker to determine if you're running the right PSI water to make snow. And then the most critical piece of equipment, the needle valve right here. All right, as you saw at the beginning of this video, I've already perfected it. I've already been able to make snow. I wanted to make sure I could make the snow before I went into actually making the video. But right now, it's way too warm outside to make snow. We've got a cold front coming through in another couple of days, so I'll bring you back then when it gets cold enough on how to actually set this thing up properly and adjust it to make good quality snow. All right, we're leaving our pressure washer there inside the shop. We got a 50-foot hose on the reel that comes all the way out here, just in case something goes wrong, stops running. Last thing I want to do is for my expensive pressure washer to freeze and burst on me. But anyway, we got a Snowmaker here, just zip tied to a ladder. It's pointing up slightly. We're going to try and blow it out here, although the way the kind of the wind swirling, I doubt we're going to have a whole lot of accumulation because it's just going to blow it all over. But we'll get a little base, and then hopefully after this front moves through in, I don't know, 12, 24 hours, the wind will die down. It'll still be cold, and we'll get a huge pile of snow out here. So before I hook my air hose up, we've already got the water line hooked up. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the pressure washer on and spray water out through here, show you what it looks like without the nucleating nozzle on, and then we'll slowly adjust the nucleating nozzle just to show you just how much water should be coming out of here. All right, you see right here, we got the water spraying out. I mean, it's just missing out, and of course, it's not freezing or anything. We don't have our nucleating nozzle on or the air hose hooked up yet. All right, so now we're just going to crack open the nucleating nozzle just a little bit, and this is where that needle valve really comes into play. All right, that might be more water than what we actually need to make snow. I mean, it just needs to be open just, a hair. And this is where, having a ball valve or a gate valve, it's almost impossible to get it adjusted right. So I'm slowly cranking it down a little bit. So we just got just a little bit coming out right here. We're reading a little over 600 PSI, which a little lower than what I was saying in the video, but I mean, it has worked for me. But maybe next time I do it, I'll get a one size smaller tip for this one right here. All right, now that we got that adjusted that way, I'm gonna hook my air hose up. All right, now the nucleating nozzle is blowing. You can see, it turned white. We got ice crystals forming. You see how it's kind of getting sucked up here into the bulk stream, and that's what you want to make snow. You kind of hear how it's spitting and sputtering a little bit. Might need to go just open up my needle valve just a hair more. Now what I found last time I did it was that those needle valves can be real finicky. Like that, we just barely got it cracked open, and over the course of running, I don't know if maybe a little ice crystals get in there that kind of block the flow to where it blocks the water coming down in there, then you just got air coming out. So on the front end, I'll generally adjust it to have a little bit heavier flow than what it really needs at that point. But then after it runs a little while, it seems to be about perfect for what we want to do. Now this only applies to say you're going to do it overnight. You're going to go to bed and just leave it overnight, and you don't want it to stop making snow in the middle of the night. Now if you could be out here to monitor it every 30 minutes to an hour and adjust as needed, then go ahead and adjust it perfectly on the front end. You can already tell right out here, we're already starting to get some white on the ground. And like I said, right now we're kind of in marginal conditions. The wet bulb temperature says it's about 25 degrees wet bulb temperature, but I mean, we got this bright sun. You got solar radiation coming to effect somehow. So, but here in a few hours, guarantee you, our snow production is definitely going to go pick up. And then, no, it's blowing out snowflakes out here. Kind of wet snow, but I mean, it is making snowflakes. I can see it on my arm. So anyway, we'll let this run a while. Come back out here and check on the progress. running about 3 hours out here, and we've definitely made some progress. Now the sunset, we're definitely blowing some good snow, but let me show you that problem I talked with you about the nucleating nozzle. See, it's just not putting out a whole lot. That's why you need to, if you're going to leave it sitting running all night, you need to open it up just maybe a little bit more than normal. Another big problem was the sun hitting this hillside. This ground wasn't froze, so a lot of it melted on contact. But let's go out here and see what the consistency of the snow is. A little slushy, not dry and powdery, but I imagine by this time tomorrow morning, that's probably going to change. But right there, we probably got 4 inches accumulation already. And you can see my footsteps there, you know, the ground's not frozen. So anyway, we'll let this run all night. We'll see what it looks like in the morning. Man, won't y'all look at that pile of snow there. It's about 8:45 in the morning. We turned it on at like 1:30, 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and that's how much snow 3.5 gallons per minute water flow produces you. And then of course, you know, wind drifted a little bit. You know, we got 1 inch in the surrounding areas. Let's see just how deep that pile is right there. We got a Ryan Hall, y'all, snow meter. We have 38 inches of snow in this mound. Just so y'all know, I'm not fooling you. And we got at least another 24 to 36 hours good snow making. I'm gonna see if I can make enough to make a snow cave there. Well guys, I think we succeeded here. Behind me is probably about a 7-foot tall mound of snow, and I'm standing on about 4 to 5 inches of snow. It's over my head. I'm 6'2". Yeah, and we're only about 43 hours total run time. See the surrounding area, you know, we got a real good base of snow just where the wind's blown it. But during the night when the wind dies down, I mean, it's all been piling right here. I guess I can go ahead and make that snow cave now. So anyway guys, before I close this video out, I just want to give you a couple other tips that I've read. I haven't had to utilize them, but if you have problems with your air line freezing up, right now we're running a 3/8 inch hose. You can run a bigger hose. I've also heard reports of people actually using like a garden hose to run an air line, just as long as it's rated for the PSI. I think you need to maintain probably at least 90 PSI is kind of about the minimum you need to do on your air system. Said ours is 150 PSI, but you really need at least 90 PSI. And I'm not sure what the ratio of air to water needs. Say you got a big pressure washer like we do, 3.5 gallons per minute, and you got a small air compressor, say 4 to 5 cubic feet per minute. I don't really know if that would work too well together. I do know that having more air is more important than having more water. Also, when sourcing your tips, you know, the first 2 numbers is the width of the angle of spray. The narrower you go, the farther you'll be able to shoot it, whereas you know, a wider pattern will give you more of a pile in a shorter area. So you can see right here, you know, pile is long and narrow. But the main thing is to make sure that you don't have, say, wet edges on your pile. You want your bulk nozzles to be a narrower width than what your nucleate nozzle is. That way the nucleate nozzle can see the entire width of spray on your bulk nozzle. Also, to test to make sure you got it adjusted properly, you can do what they call a black glove test. Now I don't have a black glove, but I'm going to use my sleeve here. Let's stick it up here in the bulk nozzle flow. See, there's nothing but wet. Now when I stick it down here in the nucleating nozzle, see, we're getting white. Nothing but ice crystals there, so that's what you want right there. Oh, and one other thing to help you monitor that nucleating nozzle in your progress, whether, you know, so you don't have to go outside that often, or you're, say, at work and wanting to monitor it remotely. If you got access to like a Ring camera or a pet camera or a security camera, that really helps to be able to monitor the water flow through the nucleating nozzle. So we got a security camera up there on the corner. It can zoom in. I can see the nucleating nozzle real good. So, you know, when I'm up there at my house, don't have to keep running back out here to monitor that. So if you got access to that, that's just a helpful tip just to make sure your Snowmaker is performing. So anyway, guys, I've imparted all of my limited knowledge that I've picked up in the last couple of months. It is possible. We are successful. And, you know, based upon your own individual circumstances, you might have to do some tweaking with your equipment, your nozzles, and all that kind of stuff to perfect it for your area and your conditions. Well, guys, I appreciate y'all watching. I hope y'all don't go too far down the rabbit hole, because I tell you what, once you start making snow, it can kind of be addictive. Just a fair warning. Guys, appreciate y'all watching. See you in the next one.